In a few seconds that passed. The helicopter landed, and I stayed away from him because I knew you don't want to run up to them when they're all spooled up running fast. And the medic got out of the helicopter, and I saw he had a rifle with him. So I kept looking around. I did not know where these shooters were. They might be gone, but they might just be laying in the brush somewhere. He came and got me, and he grabbed me by my shirt collar, and he said, "Are you that Pinal County deputy that shot?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Well, come with me." And he grabs me, and he takes me to the helicopter, and he puts me in the helicopter. We take off and fly out of there. We land out by the interstate. They take me out of the helicopter, and then they gave me to the ambulance crew. They took my weapon and all my gloves and my hat and my spare ammo and everything away from me. And to the best of my recollection, that's what happened.
Okay. You go ahead. I think you got everything, Lou. I just want to go over a couple of things real quick.
Okay.
Just to define your duty as a search and rescue and TLO person for the sheriff's office, when not assigned to something, your basic duty assignment is patrol in the rural areas of the county. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And it's up to me to pretty much decide where I go and what I need to do. If I have a particular thing I'm working on, I go take care of it. And the rest of the time, my sergeant trusts me to keep myself busy and do what I need to be doing, and that's what I try to do.
Yeah. Similar to a patrol deputy.
Exactly.
But your assignment is countywide to the areas that you know about, in particular
exactly.
to your particular set of skills being more remote in search and rescue, mountainous ranching. Exactly. So that's a normal day for you, in other words?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I often go sit and watch smuggler trails.
And that's more or less what you do. You're out there enforcing the law in the remote areas.
Where I have good radio signal and or phone signal, and if I find such a place where I can also observe a trail, I'll set up sometimes and watch trails for hours, because that's how you catch them. That's how they're going to come up those trails sooner or later.
Okay. Well, that brings me to the next one. When we were talking, you were up on the hill above your truck watching, and you saw the smugglers.
Yes.
Just to clarify, you saw them through binoculars?
At first, I did not. First, I saw them with naked eye.
Okay. By
the time I could reach my binoculars, they passed in front of me a little bit and were starting to drop down in a ravine.
Okay.
It was about 200 yards.
When you were out there and moving, and what we're going to indicate from the pictures, you were moving from your position at your truck north to where the shooting occurred in
yes.
general direction.
Yes.
As you began moving north over the ridges to get to the point where the shooting occurred, did you notice or have any indication that there was an additional person up on Antelope Peak that was acting as a spotter?
I remember thinking about that and looking, but I couldn't tell. I even looked with my binoculars once or twice, but I did not see any spotters.
Now that you've had almost 5 days worth of rest and time to reflect on this, has anything come back to you where during the time you were following these people that you maybe overheard what sounded like radio chatter?
I heard nothing like that. No communications at all.
Okay. And that's just, I'm being specific to the smugglers maybe in radio communication with the spotter. You were
they
never
could have
even,
been, but I didn't.
But you didn't hear any of that?
I didn't hear anything like that.
Okay. And when we talk about, we're looking at photograph number 1, which is labeled number 1 at the top, is a picture of the back of Sergeant Pinal and the back of your head facing north. And we're looking here. We were talking earlier off tape, and when we were out at the scene using the green tarp as a reference point. Is that, if I'm right, remembering what we talked about, the green tarp is the general area where the individual stood up and began shooting at you?
Yes, the green tarp is beside the trail. He was in the trail, but it's at the same distance.
Okay.
He was in the trail.
When that happened, you were out there and you were wearing the clothing that we have photographs of. You had your silver Pinal County Sheriff's Deputy badge on your belt in plain view.
Yes.
You were armed with a rifle.
Yes.
At the time, this individual stood up and, as you said, stood up, looked at you directly, made no attempt to make any contact with you, and then raised a rifle and fired at you, in your mind, what did you think his intention was?
He was intending to kill me.
There you Okay. The last one, Louis, if you could help me out here, just because we're going to have these pictures as our references. When we talked about picture number 1 again as our reference, from the position that you're standing at, you had mentioned that after you guys exchanged gunfire, you and the man with the AK-47 that was trying to kill you, was he the one that you talked about that ran straight away?
I don't believe he was.
So there was a second individual that you saw run away.
Yes.
In picture number 1, using, you're in the lower right corner of the picture. In more or less the center of the picture is the green tarp that we used as reference. In the upper right portion of the picture is a black object sitting on the hilltop, which is actually the Black Hawk helicopter. With those 3 reference points, could you just give us a general area of where this guy ran that you were talking about over the hill and straight away from you?
He ran straight up the hill.
You can write on here if you'd like to.
He ran straight up the hill from down in here, straight up to where that helicopter is, and disappeared from my view over the hill right there. He was out in the open there. I could see him clearly. He was running straight away. He did not appear to have any weapons. He was not carrying a pack. So
just for the purpose of the tape, since we're not videoing it, you've indicated that from more or less from the top of Sergeant Pinal's head,
yes,
almost straight up towards the helicopter is where this subject ran.
But keep in mind, I did not see him when I was here. He did not run till I had moved back and relocated myself back up over here. But he ran straight up that hill and went over the top, right where that helicopter's sitting.
Okay. In your mind, and you've been working out there in the desert and with smugglers for in excess of 8 years at least, is that correct?
I've been a range deputy for 10 years.
So you're very familiar both with this area and the patterns that they use?
Yes, I am.
In the photographs that we have in front of you, we have 1, 2, and 3. In reference to photograph number 3, which is a close-up photograph of a kind of a flattened out area underneath the Palo Verde tree in which the cell phones, the batteries, and an AK-47 magazine were located. We know that from DPS telling us that.
Yes.
Photograph number 3 is a close-up of a position that you can see in photograph number 2. That's the looking back from the north to the south, again using the green tarp as reference.
Yes.
When we talk about where your guy ran, we're using the green tarp as reference. We look at, in a general location, the center of photograph number 2 is a distance of photograph number 3. Would you say that that would more or less put that photograph number 3's position in a similar area as where you showed us on photograph number 1 where the second subject ran from?
Yes.
So in your mind, there's no question that this subject that you saw running was part of the original smuggling group that intended you bodily harm?
Yes, I believe he was. Initially, I thought he was one of the second group of shooters, but I did not see a weapon on him.
And just to clarify that, you saw that individual run, you did not recognize a weapon, and you did not fire upon that person.
I never fired a shot at him. I saw he was not, appeared not to be armed, and I did not shoot at him.
All right.
I never fired a shot after the initial exchange. Once I moved, I never again fired a shot anywhere. I could not see any targets to shoot at.
The only quick questions I had, what milepost did you exit to get to the trail that you took down there in the vehicle? Do you know?
I don't know the milepost, but I can tell you it's right at the county line. The county line sign is right there at that gate.
Okay, at the county sign.
I don't know what the milepost is.
Okay. Do you know what the milepost is for the truck stop? By any chance?
140 something.
Okay.
I don't know what it is exactly.
It's not a big deal. I was just wondering if you knew the gap between the area of that trail, how far east and west that trail covers, or is it just a straight north and south trail from the truck stop?
When that trail gets down onto the flat country, out of the mountains here, before it gets to the truck stop, there are 5 or 6 different trails that branch off.
Oh, okay.
And they all lead out to the interstate, and it's up to they'll use different ones at different times.
And then they funnel into that one that you says goes up and over top of that mountain?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's the one that ultimately comes out at the truck stop?
Yes.
Okay.
But out in the open country, farther north towards the truck stop, there's multiple trails going everywhere. But until you get there, there's just that one main trail that comes from Tabletop. It's the most used trail anyway. There may be others I don't know about, but it is the most heavily used trail, and it's almost a straight line from the lava flow trail up to that saddle.
Okay.
Matter of fact, you can see the saddle from the lava flow trail.
I think that's...
Just one more, probably the last one. We're going to go back to where we're talking about the individual that came up in the trail that began shooting at you. Just for the record, Louis, can you give us a physical description of what you saw from that person?
He was probably my height, probably 5'8" or maybe 5'10". He was a little bit below me. It's really hard to judge height. He was slender. He was wearing dark clothing. And thinking back on it, I think he was wearing 2 or 3 flannel shirts, and that's not uncommon for smugglers to do. They wear typically 2 layers of clothing to protect them from the elements. At night, it gets cold out there at night from the brush, and dark-colored pants, probably some kind of jeans. No specific details. I don't remember seeing his face. His face does not come to me. I don't know if he was wearing a mask or not. I don't remember thinking that he was, but he had a ball cap on. Everything was dark, more or less just silhouettes. What I saw.
Okay. And then when you first saw the subjects, when you were sitting up in the saddle above your truck, and you saw them, can you give us physical descriptions as best you can to the numbers that you saw there, what they were wearing, what they looked like?
Okay, they were. I noticed right away that they were big, strong men. They weren't the typical UDA, undocumented alien you see traveling in the desert. Is typically a small statured, lightweight person. I don't know for sure why that is. It just happens to be the majority of them. I remember thinking to myself, these are great, big, strong guys carrying those packs. They were 5'8", 5'10". Probably not 6 feet, but they were big, much stronger than the average-looking illegal. They were dressed in dark clothing, dark pants, T-shirts, sweatshirts, dark flannel shirts, but all dark. Nothing bright that would show up. There were 5 of them carrying big packs, and one walking in front that was not carrying a pack of any kind that I could see. And pretty much that's it. No real specific details, just mostly dark clothing. Some of them had ball caps on, some of them didn't. I remember the last man in line did not have a cap on. He had shoulder-length black hair. And he's the only person out of this whole group that I ever saw any facial features of. He turned, as he was hiking up the trail, he turned to go around a bush or something, and when he did, he went profile to me, and I was looking at him with binoculars, and I could see the side of his face from 100 yards or so away, but through good binoculars. I could see the shoulder-length black hair, that he was not wearing a cap. He was very dark complected, he had a long face, and he had high cheekbones. And I remember thinking to myself, that man is an Indian. He's probably not a Mexican smuggler. And I remember thinking that because that's what he looked like. And that's really all the detail. I was telling myself I need detail. I need to be able to remember details because that's what we do. But that's all I could get. It was at a distance, and he's the only one I ever saw facial features of.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Fitzgibbons, do you have any comments?
Louis, how long have you been doing this type of work?
I've been a search and rescue deputy and working in the desert. It'll be 10 years in June.
And recently, or within the last year or two, what information have you received in your official capacity concerning these smugglers and how they would interact with law enforcement?
That recently, in the last year or so, they've become much more aggressive. They never used to carry guns up here through the. If you saw somebody carrying dope in the desert, you could just holler at them. They'd drop their dope and everybody take off running. They don't do that anymore. They're more inclined to fight than not. And And just recently, I had seen photographs taken from game cameras in this very same canyon showing armed men with AK-47s escorting loads just like the one I was looking at that day.
So when you confronted the gentleman, he raised his weapon to you.
We saw each other at the same time.
But your thought was when he raised his weapon to you that he was going to,
When he raised his weapon, he was already shooting.
and with the intent to kill you.
Yes.
And-
I believe the very first bullet he fired is the one that struck me. He fired that folding stock AK from the hip with the stock folded. He fired from the hip, a burst at me. I believe it was a full automatic AK, not the one you buy over the counter. This was a real military weapon. He fired a five or six, whatever, short burst at me. I remember seeing the muzzle flash and feeling that sting in my side at the same time. And I knew I'd been hit. I knew he was shooting at me. My weapon wasn't even up yet. I was still grabbing it and bringing it up.
And when you returned fire, you said your focus was center mass. Was there anything in the background that caused you concern before you fired your weapon?
Concern for a backdrop?
Right, yeah. Did you?
Mountain.
You knew there was nobody.
There was nobody. We were way out in the middle of nowhere, and he's down below me in a wash. So anything behind him is just going to be hillside, rocks, and sand.
So there was no danger of hitting anything?
No danger to anybody else.
Same thing on the right side when you
Same
fired?
thing on the right side.
Questions?
You good?
Anything else you want to add, Louis?
That's all I can remember.
Okay, and just for the record, this is an ongoing investigation. Should something new come up or something you think is significant, we'd encourage you to give us a call so we can include it into supplements from there.
I certainly will.
At this point, I don't see any further. Just to clarify that you understand that the questions you asked here were part of the Pinal County Sheriff's Office criminal investigation.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. It's now 16:21 hours, and that concludes the interview at this time. Mr. Fitzgibbons, I didn't put a starting time. Did you put down the starting time that we started?
I wrote down 3:35.
Okay, so
if that's okay with everybody. I know
Yeah.
the interview's gone about 47 minutes.
Okay. Good enough. And that concludes the interview at this time.